Rules for thee, but not for me. Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video here at Truckin' Life. Today we're going to be talking about the EPA again and this deleted trucks situation. Are they going to allow it, disallow it, or whatever? But I wanted to react to a couple of comments that I got on my previous video. If you guys haven't checked that video out, here's the thumbnail right here so you guys can see what I had to say about that and see what you guys agree, disagree, or any new things that you might think of, right? But I got a couple of comments, and there was one in particular, and I'm going to go ahead and show them to you guys right now, that got me thinking to where I actually did a little bit more homework and a little bit more research. But let's go ahead and get into the comments right now so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. So let me just pull it up here real quick. So we have this guy named the Venom 8343. I'm a shop foreman for a DOT shop, and the emissions bullshit costs our taxpayers thousands every single year. Not to mention when they shut down in the middle of an emergency response situation, example, snow events, ice events, tornado cleaning, just to name a few. And it's not just the trucks. We've even had equipment shut down in the middle of the road. So yeah, delete should be legal. I despise that crap. So he's absolutely right. I agree with him on that. You know, I mean, can you imagine you need a fire truck or, you know, a emergency response for a meat wagon? For those of you guys who are not truck drivers, that means an ambulance. And, you know, you're trying to get to an emergency and the truck derates, like to where now you're risking somebody's life or being able to help the fire department to go put a fire out or help somebody out of a car. And you got to be dealing with this emissions crap. You know what I mean? So I 100% agree with this guy and what he's saying, that, you know, these trucks shouldn't really be dealing with that emission stuff, right? Because it could create a hazardous condition. But, you know, besides from it being emergency stuff, like even us truck drivers are just moving freight from, you know, point to point within the United States or whatever. You know, it might not be an medical emergency at that specific time, but, you know, trucks haul everything. Everything you buy at a store comes from a truck at one point. You might have medical supplies that is going to a hospital or whatever. You know, I kind of find it odd, and comment down below if you agree with me or whatever. Why is it that this stuff is always because, you know, like this particular is because of emissions and environmental safety, you know, but when it comes to safety, for example, like with the logbook, once we have a FEMA load or an emergency that's going on, you know, in a certain place, like for example, like the North Carolina thing, right? Once you get the logbook exemption, like all the safety stuff goes out the window. You can literally run outside the scope of what you're supposed to be running because you're on a FEMA load, right? So it's only like when the government wants. Like when the government wants to, safety goes out the window. You could literally have a FEMA load and drive 16 hours if you want, and you're fine. No penalties, no nothing. But just whenever they need something. Like, I don't think that's right. You know what I mean? Like, if that's the case, what about the safety? Like, you mean to tell me that a driver can't get tired if he drives 15, 16 hours to get a load somewhere? Like, it's only when the government deems it, like, correct that you can do that type of stuff. But I thought that was a very, very good comment right there. We'll go up to a next one. At Topperman4541, as a mobile heavy equipment and truck mechanic, 80% of all my repairs are emissions. I would have to say that I agree with you on that as well. You know, as you guys know, you know, I do a lot of shop work with my brother at my brother's shop, and I would have to say that I'm not necessarily saying that 80% of our trucks that come into the shop have to do with emissions, but a lot of them do have to do with emissions repairs. I mean, that's not to say that it might have an engine issue or transmission or whatever, but a lot of these problems are due to emissions. So thanks for your comment there. This one is where it got really interesting and where I started doing my research on it. So he pointed out at Augustine Griffith 1118, since Ford, for a start, already makes factory deleted trucks for the military, couldn't you just use the software package they put on those models? That brought up a very, very good point to where I actually started to do a little bit more research. So, in my previous video, if you guys haven't watched it, I talked about ECM programming is usually the hardest step when it comes to a delete due to the fact that it's not regulated. If you go to shop A, B, and C, it's going to be different software that you're going to be able to get at a different location because it's not coming from the manufacturer. And I specified in the video that if these deletes, were to be legal, and the manufacturer's providing the software for the delete, you would expect to have a little bit better functionality due to the fact that it's their engineers who are, they designed the engine. So they're doing all the computer stuff and making sure it gets programmed and works correctly. That's not to say that it's going to work flawlessly, but there's some quality control. If you go to a shop in Washington or if you go to a shop in New York that's an authorized dealer for whatever engine you have that has emission systems on it, you're going to kind of have that same quality control no matter where you go, because whenever you program an ECM, you use the manufacturer's software, it connects to a server, you download the files that you need for that specific truck, VIN number and engine family and everything, and you program that stuff into it, right? So I started doing a little bit more research, and I was able to come up with this, and this is where my comment in the beginning comes to: rules for thee, but not for me, right? So there is an actual regulation on these emissions to when it comes to national security. So the CFR 1068-225, you guys can see that on your screen, and I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit of it. So, for purposes of national security, certain engines equipment may be exempt from the Clean Air Act requirements if engines equipment will be owned or used by an agency of the federal government responsible for national defense and other applicable criteria met. See Clean Air Act 203B 40 CFR 1068-225, 1068-315 under 40 CFRs 1068-225. Man, that's a lot of crap right there. A national security exemption is automatically available to a manufacturer for engines equipment when the manufacturer receives a written request for such engines equipment for the appropriate federal agency, and engines equipment meet certain specialized military, combat, warfare, or other similar criteria. You guys can pretty much just Google this document and read it for yourselves or whatever, but there is already military equipment out there that has these exemptions to where you don't have to have the emission systems on it. So again, I mean, do I agree with this for national security? Yeah, I absolutely agree with it, but what about all the green stuff? Like, isn't it, not good for the environment? But the government can just say, give us a deleted truck because we don't want to deal with it. But us truck drivers out here, or any other type of transportation, because, when it comes to engines, it's not just truck drivers. It's many different sectors within transportation that use diesel engines, right? So they can delete their equipment, but we can't. Just because it's national security, or just because it's emergency response equipment. And again, I agree with it. I don't think this should be on any trucks, right? So what that leads me to believe is more than likely these manufacturers already have software that's developed to be able to delete these engines. So it would just be a matter of Congress and the Senate actually passing a bill that allows us to delete our engines, and the manufacturer more than likely already has that software in hand. It wouldn't have to be something that goes into development. But I just think that's kind of crappy, right? Like, the government doesn't have to follow their own rules. They're able to exempt themselves from certain things. I was able to find this image online right here, and as you guys can see right there, it has a sticker that says that they're exempt from it. So I just think that that's really, really crappy, to where we all have to follow the rules, but you as the government doesn't have to follow it. So I'm sure there's probably more provisions. I just kind of pretty much just looked at this one, and from what I understand it is, if they get a written request from the government that goes into one of those sectors or whatever, they can get a truck that's already deleted on emissions. I mean, I'm sure you guys have dealt with this in the past, to where your truck goes on engine D-rate, and you might be in the middle of Atlanta traffic, like in the middle lane or whatever. Or you might put yourself in a certain situation to where it's a problem because now you're derated to 5 miles an hour and you're creating a safety hazard. Safety! Safety! Time for safety! For everybody else. Like, it's just insane to me that they don't have to follow their own rules, but we, the general public, do have to follow it. I really hope that these regulations go away because, you know, look at it from this is a trucking channel, so let's just look at it from a trucking perspective. It puts you in this unsafe situation depending on where you're at. It takes away the ability for you to be able to take care of your family, you know, because now you got to go into a repair center. These emission systems are so complex that 9 times out of 10, whenever you take it to a dealer or whatever, the problem's not fixed and it ends up costing you more money. There's been times before in the past when I was new to this with this particular truck that I have right now, where I took it one time to, it was in Phoenix, I took it to a dealer there because I was having problems with the truck not regenerating. They charged me like $400 or $500. All they did was just reset the computer. 300 miles down the road, I was having the same exact issue. And I already had paid that money to where I had to go back to the shop there again and get towed there. They didn't pay my tow bill. They didn't pay my downtime. And they didn't pay the load having to get recovered. So these emission systems are causing truck drivers, and I'm not just talking about owner-operators. Like, there's been big companies that have gone out of business because they're complex systems that are expensive. They're not reliable. You're always having to deal with these emission systems that can put you out of business. And I think it would be a great thing for the trucking industry and any other industry that uses a diesel engine for us to be able to get those emission systems out. You look at these old engines, you know, your Caterpillar, your Detroit Series 60, you know, the earlier versions, you know, your pre-emission engines, and you hardly ever had issues with them. Again, it's a machine and it can break down whenever, but it wasn't something that was going to put you on the side of the road constantly like the way these emission systems have. They're just so complex, and they're not, it's not specific when you take it to a shop, this is your problem. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. It's just always creating a problem, and it has put so many of my friends that have been owner operators, it's put them out of business. So many big companies have gone out of business. I mean, you look at the news, in the trucker news in the last couple of years, and you have big companies, you know, multi-million-dollar companies that have gone under. I'm not going to just say just because of emissions, right? But that has to play a big role into it. Nobody wants to buy these trucks. These new emission standards of 2027 are crazy. And with these new regulations that might come in, a lot of companies were pre-ordering trucks to get, you know, trucks before 2027, because anything that's new is always going to have bugs in it. So you want to try to go for the truck that's going to give you the least amount of problems. So I just found it a little bit funny once I started looking into this, these comments, and it got me thinking, and I'm like, you know what, that's absolutely kind of right. And I was like, let me do a little bit more research out of it. And yeah, so the government already has vehicles out there that are deleted. So if they already have government vehicles that are deleted, that means that the manufacturer already has this software available to you. So it's just a matter of regulations. So let us delete our trucks so that we can make money. The trucking industry is already bad as it is. You know, when you have to add emission systems to the mix, you know, it's thousands of dollars, guys. I mean, a one box system, for example, a Freightliner, you're talking about $12,000 to $15,000 just for the one box itself. That's not including labor to install it and remove it. And it's insane. It could put small carriers or a small owner operator like myself out of business just because of all this emission stuff. You know, the truck I had previous to this was an N14. It's probably the best engine I've ever had. Plenty of power. Never had problems with that engine. You know, the most problems that I have with that engine is maybe an injector going out. But that truck never gave me problems. And I have this Detroit Series 60, which is also a great engine. it really hasn't given me any engine problems. It's always the emission stuff. Every time I get the middle finger yellow light, check engine light on my truck, I already know on the top of my head, more than likely it's emissions, because the truck runs fine. It's just, it'll stop regenerating for whatever reason. Seventh ejector's dirty, or maybe a clogged fuel filter, but the engine's running fine. So that's what I got for you guys in this video, guys. I just found it very, very interesting on the comments that I received. Do me a favor, check out that original video, see if you agree, disagree, you know, comment on this video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and we will catch you guys on the next one. Stay safe. Peace out.
Like, share, and subscribe.